The synthesizer is an electronic musical instrument that generates electric signals that are converted to sounds. And these sounds are usually imitations of the piano, the flute, violin, or other natural sounds and timbres. Synthesizers have been developed extensively through the last 5 decades or so. One of the first synthesizers is the RCA Mark II. It was installed at the Columbia University Music Center. In the 1960s, Robert Moog invented the analog synthesizer, which became really popular in many genres of music, including pop and classical music. Wendy Carlos developed this synthesizer with new sounds of orchestration, which she took and orchestrated the music of Bach and recorded it, and became one of the top sellers of the classical music charts in the late 1960s. In the 1970s, the polyphonic synthesizer was developed. Many different brands and models were used in many different genres. In the 1980s, the digital synthesizer was developed, such as the Yamaha DX7 and the Korg M1. These were hooked up to a computer through the musical instrument digital interface, otherwise known as MIDI. With MIDI cables, these were hooked up to the computer with a MIDI interface, which converts digital codes and protocol to musical sounds. The computer is hooked up to the synthesizer with the MIDI interface, with the protocol going in and out in a daisy chain back and forth from the software. Tone modules and sound modules were also invented in the 1980s. These are basically synthesizers without a controller, and these also had the ability to hook up to the computer to having more sounds to go back and forth in the daisy chain. They can also be hooked up to a MIDI keyboard to be used separately away from the computer. In recent times, the MIDI USB controller was invented. These are keyboards or other instruments that have no sound, and these have the ability to hook up to a virtual synthesizer, which are plugins to the digital audio workstation software. And this way they can be worked. And then of course there are other MIDI controllers, such as the Ableton Push, the MIDI Wind controller, which is like a clarinet, and then untraditional instruments like the eigenharp, which is wind as well as a whole bunch of little pads, and the continuum fingerboard, which is another untraditional MIDI keyboard. And in recent times, you also have the iPad or tablet app synthesizers, which can be attached to a computer or to a MIDI controller. Some of these apps are digital versions of physical devices, such as the Minimoog. And these could be hooked up to a MIDI controller, and the sounds would come out of the app, and it would be a new version of the older synthesizers. And this is a quick history of the development of the synthesizer.